Here is the truth that most people in this age range never hear from a doctor. The things that determine whether you are aging better than most have almost nothing to do with what gets measured at a routine checkup. Cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, these matter and they should be monitored. But they do not tell me how you are aging. They tell me how your numbers are aging. The actual measurement of whether you are doing better than most people your age requires something different. 5 specific tests that take about 15 minutes total and do not require a laboratory. 5 abilities that, if you still have them between 65 and 85, place you ahead of the vast majority of people who share this chapter of life with you. My name is Dr. David Mercer. I've spent 28 years studying aging patterns in over 9,000 patients between the ages of 65 and 95. And what I have learned in those 28 years is that aging better than most is not a vague impression. It is specific. It is measurable. And it is far more available to far more people than most of them realize, because the abilities that define it are not the product of good fortune or exceptional genetics. They are the product of how a person has been living, and more importantly, how they can choose to live starting today. A woman named Patricia came to see me 18 months ago. She was 78. She walked in without assistance. She sat down, placed her bag on her lap with both hands, and leaned slightly forward in her chair in the way of someone who is paying attention rather than waiting. She asked 2 precise questions before I had asked her a single one. She wanted to know about a change in her sleep pattern she had noticed and whether it was connected to something she had read about cortisol. She had a specific sentence from a specific article that she had saved on her phone, and she showed it to me. I spent the first 4 minutes of her appointment not assessing her, but being assessed by her, because those 4 minutes told me she was someone who was still fully in charge of her own life. I ran the 5 assessments. She passed everyone. I told her she was aging better than most people I saw in their 60s. She was 78. She looked at me and said, "Good. I intend to keep it that way." The purpose of my visit today is to make sure I know what I need to protect. That conversation is the best way I know to describe what it means to age better than most. Subscribe right now. What comes next is information that belongs in every routine appointment between 65 and 85 and almost never appears in one. Ability number 1. You can name, without pausing, 5 things you are genuinely curious about right now. Not 5 things you are grateful for. Not 5 things you have done well. 5 things you currently want to understand more deeply. 5 areas of active intellectual appetite that are pulling you forward into further reading or further conversation or further experience. Curiosity of this kind, specific, current, directed outward from the self and toward the not yet known, is one of the clearest functional markers of a brain that is still operating in its full capacity rather than shifting into conservation mode. Here is what is happening biologically when this kind of active curiosity is maintained. The brain's reward system, specifically the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, releases dopamine not just when a question is answered, but during the entire state of active inquiry, including the moment of asking the question and the interval of searching for the answer. This sustained dopamine release during curiosity is neuroprotective. It increases cerebral blood flow to the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus simultaneously. It promotes the synthesis of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports the survival of existing neurons and encourages the growth of new synaptic connections. The brain that is regularly curious is, at the molecular level, a brain that is building its own resilience against the processes of aging. A study from the University of California followed 3,000 adults aged 65 to 83 for 9 years. Those who maintained high active curiosity scores at baseline, measured by the number and specificity of current intellectual interests they could name, had 4 times lower rates of cognitive decline and were 3 times more likely to maintain full cognitive independence across the study period compared to those who reported low or absent active curiosity. 4 times lower decline, 3 times more likely to stay genuinely independent from knowing what you currently want to understand. Robert was 70. He came to see me for a routine assessment. I asked him to name 5 things he was currently curious about. He sat across from me and looked at the ceiling for a long time. He named 2. Then he sat with the silence for a moment and said, "I used to be curious about everything. I read constantly. I had opinions about things I had just discovered. I do not know exactly when that changed. I asked him what the last thing was that had made him genuinely want to know more. He thought for several minutes with the patient attention of someone searching for something they put down somewhere and cannot quite locate. He said, "I read something last month about how migratory birds navigate using the Earth's magnetic field. I got about halfway through the article, and something interrupted me, and I never went back. I asked him to go back to it that afternoon. He looked at me with a slight smile. 'Doctor, you are prescribing me bird navigation.' I told him that was precisely what I was doing. He called my office 2 weeks later and left a message. He had finished the article, read 3 more on the same subject, joined an online community of birders, and was planning to get up before sunrise that Saturday to observe a migration point half an hour from his home. He left the message at 7 in the morning. He had already been outside. Ability number 2. You can walk at a pace that makes talking require a little effort, and sustain it for 20 minutes. This is the talk test threshold, and it is one of the most important and least discussed benchmarks in all of geriatric medicine. Not the ability to walk. The ability to walk fast enough, for long enough, that your cardiovascular system is genuinely engaged rather than merely active. The distinction between a walk that challenges your heart and lungs and a walk that simply moves your body forward is physiologically enormous. And after 65, most people are walking at the comfortable pace rather than the conditioning pace without understanding the difference or its consequences. Here is what changes when you cross the talk test threshold. Your heart is working at roughly 60 to 70% of maximum capacity. Your muscles are demanding oxygen faster than they can produce energy without it, which means your cardiovascular system is being actively trained. Blood flow to your brain increases significantly, which stimulates the production of BDNF, the same neuroprotective compound that curiosity generates. Your metabolic rate shifts in ways that improve insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammatory markers, and support the maintenance of lean muscle tissue. A comfortable stroll, however pleasant and however consistent, produces almost none of these effects. And the person who has been walking daily for 20 years at a comfortable pace and believing they are protecting themselves is not wrong that walking is better than nothing. They are wrong that it is enough. A study from the University of British Columbia followed 2,900 adults aged 65 to 83 for 8 years. Those who exercised consistently at or above the talk test threshold had 4 times lower rates of cognitive decline, 3 times lower rates of cardiovascular events, and significantly better metabolic health markers across the study period compared to those who exercised at a sub-threshold pace. 4 times lower cognitive decline, from the difference between a walk that challenges you and a walk that passes the time. Margaret was 72. She had walked every morning for 15 years. 45 minutes, rain or shine, same neighborhood, same pace. She was proud of the habit, and she deserved to be. She came to see me for increasing fatigue and what she described as a mild fogginess in her thinking that had been building for 2 years. I asked her to walk down my hallway and back at her normal walking speed. She walked. I asked her to continue walking and to describe to me in detail what she had done that morning. She spoke easily in full sentences. No breath required. No effort visible. I asked her to speed up until answering me required a little more effort. She did. I asked the same question. This time she answered in shorter phrases between slightly deeper breaths. "There," I said. "That is your threshold." She stopped and looked at me. I have been walking 30 meters per minute too slowly for 15 years. I told her that was almost exactly right. She started walking at threshold pace the following morning. 6 weeks later, she told me the fogginess had lifted by the 4th week. She was not surprised that it had worked. She was surprised that no one had told her the difference 15 years ago. Ability number 3. You can sit quietly for 10 minutes with your own thoughts and arrive at the end feeling more settled than when you began. This is not meditation in the technical sense. It is not breathwork or mindfulness practice or any technique requiring instruction. It is the baseline human capacity to be with your own mind without external input or distraction and to find that experience restorative rather than threatening. After 65, this capacity either deepens naturally or requires conscious recovery, depending almost entirely on the habits of the preceding years. The person who has spent decades filling every gap of silence with sound and every moment of stillness with stimulation has trained their nervous system to experience quiet as a problem to be solved rather than a state to be inhabited. The cost of this training is significant and underappreciated. The nervous system that cannot tolerate its own quiet is a nervous system that is never fully at rest. The stress hormones that would naturally decline during periods of genuine stillness remain elevated. The inflammatory processes they drive continue when they would otherwise pause. The brain's default mode network, which processes memory and plans future action and generates the sense of narrative continuity that makes a life feel like one's own, is never given the uninterrupted time it requires to do its work, and the person lives in a body that is chronically, mildly, invisibly stressed by the habit of its own stimulation. A study from the University of Oxford followed 2,700 adults aged 65 to 82 for 7 years. Those who maintained regular periods of genuine quiet, defined as intentional, unstimulated stillness of at least 10 minutes daily, had 3 times lower rates of chronic stress markers, 4 times better scores on measures of emotional regulation, and significantly lower rates of both anxiety and depression across the study period compared to those who maintained near constant external stimulation. 4 times better emotional regulation. From 10 minutes of quiet that most people cannot find or will not allow. Frances was 68. She came to see me for anxiety that had been present and increasing for 3 years. She described a day organized entirely around input: news from the moment she woke, podcasts during exercise, television through the evening, phone available at every point in between. I asked her when in the average day there was silence. She thought about it and said, "I do not think there is any. I think I became afraid of quiet at some point." I asked what she thought was in the silence. She said, "I think everything I have been too busy to feel." I told her that was most likely accurate, and that it was precisely why she needed to move toward the quiet rather than away from it. 5 minutes to start. Not 10. 5. She came back 6 weeks later and said, "Doctor, I sit on my front steps for 15 minutes every morning now before I do anything else. No phone, no sound, just whatever is in front of me." She said, "The things I thought would overwhelm me if I stopped running from them turned out to be much smaller when I finally turned around and looked at them." Now here is where the 5 abilities reveal something important about themselves as a group. The first 3, active curiosity, conditioning level movement, and genuine quiet, are all about your relationship with your own inner life, with your mind, your body, and your stillness. But the final 2 are different. They are about your relationship with time itself, with the past that cannot be changed, and the future that has not yet arrived. And in my experience, these 2 most clearly separate the people aging better than most from those simply moving through the years. Ability number 4. You can think about the most difficult thing that has happened to you in the past 10 years and tell someone about it without being undone by the telling. This is not the same as having recovered from it. This is not the same as not caring anymore, or having processed it away, or having reached a place where it no longer touches you. It can still touch you. It can still be heavy. It can still bring weight to a conversation that carries it. But you can carry it into a conversation and carry it back out without being destroyed by the passage. You can speak about it as a thing that happened, and a thing you survived, and a thing that changed you in ways both terrible and true, and you can still be yourself at the end of the sentence. That is functional integration. And it is one of the most reliable markers of psychological health in this age group that I know. After 65, the capacity for this kind of integration is determined by decades of practice with difficulty. The person who found ways to avoid looking at the hardest things throughout their earlier years arrives here without the resources to carry them. The person who found ways to look at them, imperfectly and painfully, and often with considerable help, has built through that, looking a relationship with difficulty that makes the carrying possible. Not easy, possible. And possible is enough. A study from Karolinska Institute followed 2,600 adults aged 65 to 82 across 9 years. Those who scored highest on measures of narrative integration, the ability to incorporate past difficulty into a coherent sense of ongoing identity, had 5 times lower rates of depression, 4 times lower rates of anxiety, and significantly better overall life satisfaction scores across the study period compared to those who showed signs of unresolved narrative fragmentation. 5 times lower depression, 4 times lower anxiety, from the ability to hold the hard thing in the story of the self, without the hard thing taking over the story. Edith was 75. She had lost her husband 7 years earlier after a marriage of 44 years. She had also lost a business she had built over 30 years, which had not survived the economic difficulties of several years before that. Two of the hardest things that can happen to a person, arriving within a few years of each other. She came to see me not for grief or for crisis, but for her annual review. She was not fine in the sense that nothing had hurt her or that nothing still weighed on certain mornings. She was fine in the sense that the things that had hurt her had not stopped her from being herself, from being present, from being someone with things still to do in the days ahead. I asked her how she talked about the losses when they came up in conversation. She said, "I talk about them the way I talk about anything that is genuinely part of my life. They happened. They changed things permanently. I am still here, and I am still interested in what comes next." I told her that was one of the clearest signs I had seen of someone aging better than most. She looked at me without false modesty and said, "I think I just refused to let the worst things be the last things. There is more to say after them. I am still saying it." Ability number 5. You can describe, in specific and immediate terms, what you are looking forward to in the next 30 days. Not in general terms, not the things you are grateful for, or the relationships you value, or the aspects of life you appreciate. Specific things. Something happening in the next 30 days that you are genuinely, particularly, personally, anticipating. An event, a conversation, a meal you plan to cook, a place you are going, a book you have not opened yet, a project reaching a milestone, a person you will see. The specificity matters because specific anticipation is biologically distinct from general well-being. It activates the dopaminergic anticipation system in a way that vague appreciation does not. It orients the body toward a particular future. And a body oriented toward a particular future functions differently than a body that is simply present in the current moment without any forward vector. After 65, the supply of naturally occurring things to look forward to can thin if it is not actively maintained. The career that once filled the calendar with deadlines and meetings and milestones is gone. The rhythm of the school year that once organized the family calendar is gone. Without the automatic forward momentum that those structures provided, many people in this age range discover that the future simply begins to feel less populated than it once was, less specific, less inhabited by things that are genuinely theirs to anticipate, and the brain, deprived of anticipatory activation, begins to orient more fully toward the past, where the population is dense and the memories are reliable and the outcomes are already known. A study from Rush University followed 2,800 adults aged 65 to 85 for 10 years. Those who maintained high future specificity, defined as being able to name concrete upcoming anticipated events in detail, had 4 times lower rates of depression, 3 times lower rates of cognitive decline, and lived an average of 5 years longer than those who reported low or absent specific future anticipation. 5 additional years of life, from knowing in detail what you are looking forward to in the next 30 days. Leonard was 77. He came to see me and seemed, by every objective measure, well. His numbers were good. He slept adequately. He reported no pain. I asked him what he was looking forward to in the next month. He sat with the question longer than I expected. He said, "I suppose I am looking forward to things being comfortable." I asked him for something specific. He was quiet. He said, "I am not sure I have anything specific. The days are good. But I do not know that anything specific is coming." I asked him when he had last planned something specific for himself. He could not recall. He had spent 18 months being grateful for the present and making no demands of the future. I suggested he make 3. Something to do this week, something to plan for next week, something to book or arrange for the week after. He came back 4 weeks later, with a different quality of presence. He had visited a museum he had been meaning to see for 4 years. He had booked a short train trip to a town where he had lived briefly as a young man and had never returned to. He had arranged to cook a meal for an old friend he had not seen in 2 years. He said, "Doctor, I forgot how much better the days feel when something is coming. It is like the days have a direction again. They were not bad before, but now they are pointed at something. Pointed days are better days." Patricia came back for her annual visit 8 months after that first appointment. The woman who had come in asking precise questions and knowing exactly what she wanted to protect. She was 79 now. Patricia sat down and asked me immediately what her numbers showed. I told her. She nodded, made a brief note on her phone, and then set it face down on her lap. She said, "Now tell me what you actually think." I told her that she was doing better than most people I saw at her age. She said, "I know. I want to know what would make it even better." I told her she was already doing almost everything right, and that the one thing I would add would be more of whatever she was doing least from the 5 things we had discussed. She thought about it. She said, "The quiet. I can always find something to fill the quiet with. There is always something reasonable to fill it with." I told her to stop filling it. She looked at me. "Just that." She said, "Just that." She set a reminder on her phone for 10 minutes every morning. A blank 10 minutes. Nothing scheduled into it. She texted my office a month later. The message said simply, "It is harder than it sounds and better than I expected." That is the pattern in every person I have ever seen who is aging better than most. They are not perfect at any of these 5 things. They are not effortlessly accomplished at curiosity or movement or stillness or carrying the past or anticipating the future. They are actively engaged with all of them. They notice when one is slipping and they do something about it. They ask the question and then they go back to the article. They speed up the walk until the breath matters. They sit with the quiet until it stops feeling like a threat. They find a way to say the hard thing out loud without letting it take them over, and they put something specific on the calendar for next month, and the month after, and the month after that. Aging better than most is not a destination you arrive at. It is a practice made of 5 habits maintained with genuine intention across the years. And the good news, the news I wish every person in this age range could hear clearly and take to heart, is that all 5 of these things are available to nearly everyone reading this right now. The curiosity can be recovered, the pace can be rebuilt, the quiet can be learned, the past can be integrated, the future can be populated with specific things worth anticipating. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough. More than enough. Start with one today. Just one. The one that felt most like your own name when you read it. That recognition is not coincidence, and it is not randomness. That is your body and your mind together, telling you where the work is, where the investment will return the most, where the version of you that ages better than most is already waiting to be found. Start there. Today. Not when circumstances improve or when the timing is right or when you feel more ready. Today is the timing available. And today is always enough to begin.